I'd like to offer tobacco as a gift to the ancients and the elders in spirit in the north and invite them to come and join us in this ceremony. I offer tobacco as a gift to the ancients and the elders in the east. Please come and join us in this ceremony. Teach us and guide us. I offer tobacco as a gift to the ancients and elders in spirit in the south. Please come and join us, guide us in this ceremony. I offer this tobacco to the ancients and elders in spirit in the west. Please come, accept this gift, and come join us in this ceremony to guide us and treat us.
It is my great joy to introduce you to Wavewalker. He is a shaman, healer from the Tongass tribe of the Tlingit Nation. Wavewalker, please share with us something about you and your spiritual family.
I am the Wavewalker, great-grandson of Anaslag of the Tongass Tlingit. I travel with Tequity, the great brown bear of the north, and with Raven, the trickster. We have traveled through many lifetimes together, and in this lifetime we come to bring peace, love, and harmony to a troubled earth. I'd like to introduce you to my mother. When she turned maturity at 18 years old, she is the fifth in line of Tlingit princesses. And this headband, the raven rattle, and the blanket with the bear and raven woven into the blanket. These traditional, the headband and the raven rattle have been with the family for many, many lifetimes. And the blanket was woven by her grandmother to represent her as a princess in the Tlingit Nation. In the beginning, on Earth, there were forests and oceans, the sky, the sun, the moon, and all was present, except there were no people on Earth. And the Creator said to the raven, "Come, and I will show you how to bring people into the earth." So Raven came, and the Creator said, "Bring a clamshell," and opened the clamshell. Raven opened the clamshell, and the Creator put 2 eggs into the clamshell. And Creator and Raven closed the clamshell, put it in the sun for 5 days. On the 5th day, Raven opened the clamshell, and the eggs had hatched, and there were 2 tiny people in the shell. And that was the beginning of people on Earth. Many, many lifetimes ago, times were different for the native people. And I, as a young man, lived in the forest and by the ocean. And the food was provided by eating roots and leaves and berries in the forest, eating clams, oysters, and small fish from the ocean, and salmon and trout in the rivers and streams. This day I was traveling up the river to find fish for my meal. And I carried a fish spear, and I was wearing only a breechclout because it was warm and sunny. I was traveling up a bear trail beside the small river because the bear fish also, they're fishermen, and they have a trail up and down beside the stream or river. And I was quietly wandering along, nice and sunny, out in an open meadow. And I looked up, and huge brown bear was coming towards me. And all the bears were not friendly. Only Tequity, our power animal, was friendly. And as he came closer, the bear looked up and smiled. And I bowed my head and smiled at bear. Bear passed me, and with his head, he motioned for me to follow. And so I followed bear. We'd back down the trail by the river and then turned into the deep forest. Short way into the forest, there was a small sapling cedar tree. The bear walked up to the cedar tree, stood up, and clawed the fine bark off this sapling cedar. And when there was a small pile of this fine bark, bear leaned down, took it in his mouth, motioned me with his head to follow, and we traveled down this path through the deep, dark forest. And then we came out into an opening, and the opening was at the head of a bay with a gravel beach. There was a stream and open to the sunlight. Bear went right through the village, and the children came out and said, "Look, look, there's a Tequity, the bear, and he has a man with him." Bear went through the village to the big house. Every village has a big house, and it's a big house that they have their celebrations, their potlatch, their weddings, their meetings, and the dinners and feasts for company. The bear went through the entrance into the big house. The entrance was at the bottom of a huge totem pole, and the opening was carved for the portal to go into the big house. And it was very low. The bear walked through with no effort, but when I came to the portal, I had to bend over to get in. The purpose of this is that if anyone was coming in, if they were friendly, there were those to meet him with open arms and greet him to the feast. But if it was an enemy, they would club him in the back of the head and kill him. And this is the way it was in those days. When my eyes became accustomed to the gloom in the big house, I saw an old shaman sitting by a smudging fire in his dream time, reading the smoke from the fire, and the smoke wafted up through the smoke hole in the roof. Bear went and sat beside the shaman, and motioned to me to sit opposite the shaman, which I did. Shaman came out of his dream time, looked at Bear, and held his hands out. And Bear leaned over and dropped the shredded bark, into the shaman's open palms. Shaman took the bark and he rolled it and rolled it and rolled it in his hands. Rolled it and rolled it and rolled it. Then, when he stopped rolling the bark, he held his two hands out and motioned to me to hold my hands, both hands open. And he leaned over and he dropped the bark into my hands. But it was no longer bark. It was a book. The shaman had turned the bark into a book. And he said to me, take this book and record our ways so they will not be lost in the future. Which I did, and I am still doing, copying the old ways of the Tlingit. After our visit with the shaman, Bear went into the nearby forest to fend for himself. I stayed in the village because I was treated as a guest and given everything I needed. And one day, Chief beckoned to the animal caller, and he said to the animal caller, we're so vulnerable here because in the cove we cannot see canoes coming from either way. But when they come, we have no warning. And if they're friendly, we have no time to prepare a feast. And if they're enemies, we have no time to take our women up into the forest to hide and to come and get our weapons ready for war. And what we need is a scout to tell us when there are canoes coming. And he asked the animal caller to call Raven to come and talk. So, animal caller, the raven was flying by, and animal caller said, come talk to us, Raven. And Raven looked over and said, yeah. He came and sat on a limb close by. And Chief said, Raven, we need a scout to tell us when there's a canoe's coming. And would you just be our scout? And Raven said, yes. But Raven said, you must offer me something in return. And the chief said, what can we give you? And Raven said, you can give me first refusal on when you bring halibut in, or animals, and when you dress them, give me and my friend Raven's first refusal on the offal. So an agreement was made, and Raven would do regular flyby to scout, and if there was canoes coming, Raven would call canoe, canoe, canoe. And so the village could prepare for either friend or foe. And this was a treaty that everybody benefited. Then, after some time, Bear came to me and said, I'm tired of this. I want to travel. And Raven came and said, I'm tired of this. I want to travel too. And I said to Raven, go and have one of your family come take your place. And you and Bear and I will travel. We'll travel south, take our time. So we began to travel. The Bear, the Raven, and I. We traveled this way for many, many moons. And every evening, I would light a small fire and sit and have a dream time in front of the fire, reading the smoke. And this is a painting done by an artist who had never met me, and he painted this picture of me in my dream time, reading the smoke, with Bear guarding me and Raven scouting to make sure there are no predators near. Because during my dream time, reading the smoke, I was very vulnerable, and there were many, many predators in those days. As we carried on this way for years and years, the time came when we were getting too close to civilization. And Bear said, I cannot go further into civilization. I must go back to the forest. And I said to Bear, you go back, but when the time comes, you leave your body and come back as spirit and talk to us and be with us. And being in spirit, civilization will not bother you. And I said, at the same time, I will leave my body and go into spirit. And we will travel together. And Raven will scout for us. And for the time being, you and I will travel in spirit. And this painting was done by another world-famous artist of Bear in spirit, and I am naked on his back in spirit. And this is the way we traveled, and Raven in the background scouting for us. We traveled this way for several more lifetimes. This is how we were traveling. As we move out of the ancient past into modern times, or into the times of our lifetimes, Raven is being a trickster, had much magic, and one of the magics he was going to perform for me. He was going to come to me as a raven rattle, the same as my mother was holding. Mine wasn't an ancient gift, but I was told by Spirit that I must have, if I'm going to practice our nation's gift, I must have a raven rattle. So I came into my den and asked the Creator, how am I going to do this? And the Creator said, you must carve a raven rattle. So I said, who is going to show me? Because I'm not a carver. And he said, Creator said, call on your uncle, Mungo Martin. You are a great carver. You're known internationally for your carving. Come talk to me. Come talk to me. Come talk to me. 3 days I drummed for an hour each day, calling on Mungo Martin, who has been in spirit for several years. Finally, on the third day, Mungo came. He spoke to me in my right ear. He said, what do you want, Jimmy? And I said, Mungo, I need you to teach me how to carve a raven with a rattle and the moon in his mouth. Mungo said to me, I won't do this. He said, I've achieved 10 times over, and I don't teach beginners. And I said, what am I to do? What will I do? And Mungo said, my understudy was Henry Hunt. Henry was also a master carver. Maybe he will show you how to carve a raven. So again, I go in, cloistered in my room, drum and drum and drum for 3 days. On the third day, my cousin Henry came to me, spoke in my right ear. He said, what do you want, Jimmy? And I said, Henry, I was told by the Creator that I must have a raven rattle, and a raven with the moon in his mouth. Can you help me? Henry said, yes, I can do that. But you have to promise me one thing. If I'm going to teach you. I said, yes, it's possible. I'll promise whatever you want. But Henry told me, when you're carving an animal, a canoe, or totem, you must imbue what you're carving with living energy. And I will show you how to do this. So I went and got a block of cedar, the size I wanted. And I took my divining rods to measure the energy in the wood. And there was none. So I began to carve, and Henry showed me how to chip away, chip away, chip away everything you don't need, and what will be left is a raven. We'll make a rattle for it. It'll have its moon in its mouth. So Henry taught me how to chip, tiny chips. And Henry said, every time you take a chip away, picture the raven and put this raven energy into the carving. There are hundreds and hundreds of chips. And every chip, think of raven and put that energy into the raven that you're carving. So I did what I was told. And here you can see the result of Raven Rattle with the moon in his mouth. And now, when I use my divining rods, the Raven Rattle has raven living energy in a field of 24 inches around. So Raven now is a living raven with life, raven life within him. And it's a miserable thing. And that's how I received my Raven Rattle. I have another story with Raven. Raven and I have traveled through many, many lifetimes, and we're very close. But on this lifetime, we weren't as close as we should be. So I was sitting in circle one evening. There was 5 or 6 of us in circle. One of the people in the circle went into a dream time, and he said, "Jimmy, I see you in a different time. You're sitting in a high-backed, old-fashioned rocking chair." And he said, "I see Raven coming, flying low over your head. When Raven is over your head, he flies up into the sky, flying towards the moon. And he disappears. After a while, the moon goes behind a cloud and disappears. Then the person doing the reading said, I see a raven coming back, and he has something in his mouth. Oh, it's the moon. Raven has taken the moon in his beak, and he's coming back down. And Raven perches on the back of your high-back wooden rocking chair. And when he perches there, your crown chakra opens wide. And Raven drops the moon into your head through your crown chakra. A long time later, I found that legend teaches that when this happens and the moon is dropped into your head, you receive great wisdom with that. It will be with you through many lifetimes. We also have another Raven story. This Raven story is of these times. I live in my home on Salt Spring Island. Salt Spring Island is a place of magic in itself. There's much magic that happens here on the island. And in the morning, I'll be sitting in my lazy boy with my coffee, looking out the window. And Raven will fly by. And I speak to Raven, and I say, Raven, have a good day hunting. Raven looks at me, and he does a flip-flop with his wing. Carries on. And this is the last of my Raven stories that I'm going to tell today.